Why do targets stay with the abuser? Why would a target not leave the minute they find out that the person that they're involved with is a liar, a cheater, a manipulator, a narcissist? It doesn't make sense to people who are on the outside. A lot of times it's because people do not want to walk away with a loss. Think about it as if you are sitting at the blackjack table gambling and you have invested all of your money gambling and you only have a little bit left. A lot of people will go all in. They'll put their last $10 in the pot and cross their fingers and hope that they get a return, that they can at least get the money back that they've lost. Well, being in a relationship with a manipulator, with a narcissist, with a toxic person, what happens is the target ends up giving their resources away. And when I say resources, I mean emotional, financial. There's always a loss of something. And it's very difficult to walk away with a loss. And so what happens is the target will sometimes choose to go all in. They'll put that last bit of money in the pot. And they'll cross their fingers and hope that something changes. They'll hope that maybe the narcissist will go to therapy with them, or the narcissist will have a breakthrough moment and understand that they've been abusive and apologize and want to make amends. And if you think about it, there's nothing wrong with the target wanting those things. It sounds pretty normal to me. Of course, we want the person that we love to admit that they've wronged you, to admit that they don't want to hurt you anymore. Targets want to hear the words, I was wrong, I hurt you, I don't want to hurt you anymore. Targets want to hear the narcissist say, I regret what I did. The target wants to hear the narcissist say, I want to change. I want to be a better person. These are the things that the target wants to hear. And so you can understand why the target would go all in, would say, I'm going to stick around a little bit longer and I'm going to hope that something changes, that the narcissist wakes up, even though the target is risking the last bit of their savings, risking the last bit of their sanity, risking sometimes their life. It's very difficult for people on the outside to not judge. It's very difficult for family members or coworkers or neighbors or friends to see what's happening and feel confused because they don't understand why the target would stay, why the target didn't just take the loss and leave right when they figured out that they were dealing with a narcissist or dealing with a very toxic manipulator. It's because walking away with nothing after investing years of your time, of your resources, of your emotional energy, and then waking up one day and saying, wow, that was a big loss. Everything's gone. First, who wants to even admit that? Who wants to acknowledge that that's the reality? Not many people. And when the target does acknowledge what's happened, it's even harder to walk away, to give up. It's not that easy to walk away with nothing. Often, after a target has left an abusive environment, especially targets who leave with nothing, targets who leave with no money, no savings, they leave broken. Not just financially broken, but emotionally broken. Often their life is even worse. It's even harder. I know it's very difficult for people to even absorb this idea that life is even harder for the target outside of the abusive relationship. And I'll explain what I'm talking about, because a lot of targets, when they are in an abusive relationship, it becomes normal. Their entire being is part of this cycle of abuse. It's all they know, especially people who grow up in toxic environments and go out into the world. That transition, it's very difficult because the target doesn't know how to exist outside of the abuse. And this is going to be very difficult for some people to grasp. But when the target is outside of the abusive relationship and they're out in the world on their own, and even when they're around kind people, they feel uncomfortable. They don't know how to adjust, to assimilate. It's very difficult, and that there's a time when the target will actually experience more emotional pain being out of the abusive environment. It's very confusing, but it's real. And that's why so many targets, one, take a very long time to leave the abusive environment, and two, it's also why a lot of targets return to the abusive environment. They return because it's actually less painful. I know it's very difficult to take this information in, especially people who have not experienced abuse. People who have not grown up in abusive environments, people who have not been in long-term abusive relationships do not get it. They do not understand how life could be worse for a target when they leave the abusive environment. But there is that moment where the pain is worse for the target. And it's something that, as outsiders, we need to understand. And when the target is in pain, and we're listening to their story, and we're thinking, no, sorry, I can't accept that you're in more pain now than you were when you were with this woman who was verbally abusive and throwing pots at you, and it doesn't make sense. But as outsiders looking in, or as someone who is trying to understand what the target is going through, just remember that change is difficult. Any sort of change is difficult. But leaving our comfort zone, and I know it's very difficult to imagine that being abused is comfort or a comfort zone, but it is. It's what the target knows. It's all they know. So I hope that this gives you a better understanding of what the target is experiencing when they're in the abusive relationship or abusive family, and what it's like for the target right after they leave the abusive environment. It's very, very painful. And it takes a long time for targets to even enter into the recovery process. And recovery is not a solid. Recovery is a lifetime process. Recovery is a fluid. Recovery is different for everyone. Some targets will leave abusive environments and the next day they're great. Other people leave abusive environments and it can take a decade.